Autism. It is something that affects a great deal of us on a regular basis. For some of us, we have to do certain things for it, like taking medication, going to counseling, or stuff like that. For some of us, though, we have learned to live with it, adapt with it, survive with it. And also, when it comes to people on the autism spectrum, no two people are alike, just like with any regular people in humanity as a whole. Now, with all that being said, my beautiful audience, I would like to introduce to you on this first inaugural episode of A Mile in My Shoes, somebody who is not only one of my best friends, but also a collaborator, a colleague, and also one of my greatest examples and mentors as a person. Ladies and gentlemen, on this first episode of A Mile in My Shoes, please welcome to the floor my buddy and resident comic book nerd, Nate Nardby.
Blah, blah, blah. Yes. Hey, we're recording this on Free Comic Book Day, which I think is appropriate to do for an episode of the show on autism. Considering
Wait, it's Free Comic Book Day?
yeah, May 6th is Free Comic Book Day of every year.
Oh my gosh, you hear that, audience? It's Free Comic Book Day. So just in case you guys need to make a mental note of this for next year, do that.
Yeah, we should have put this out way sooner and then lied, and then you could have gone out on Free Comic Book Day.
Well, you know what? I'm sorry, but certain obligations call for action, and this is one of those moments. So yes. Anyway,
that's fair enough. It's hard to lie. It's one of the key features for autistic people. We have a hard time lying convincingly, I've noticed.
You may have.
We're famously bad at it.
You may have an issue with that, but not to toot my own horn, but I've kind of turned lying into a bit of an art form. So,
well, you're a master. You're a master of deception, but the rest of us out here, it's a spectrum.
I'm not in any.
Maybe
Nate. No offense, but we're kind of getting off the subject here. Can we please veer it back? Okay. Don't get me wrong. I am having a lot of fun with this. I am, but we kind of got to stick to what we're doing. Okay. So, all right, now Nate, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this whole thing, I'm going to ask you a series of rapid fire questions, and you just answer me however well you can. All right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Coke or Pepsi or something else?
Coke.
All right. That's a good choice. Final Fantasy or Kingdom Hearts?
I guess I have to say Final Fantasy because I've played the most games from it.
Okay, that's solid.
But yeah,
ice cream or birthday cake?
Ice cream.
Okay, and finally, if you could meet any celebrity, living or dead, who would it be and why?
James Cameron. Director of classics like Avatar,
Titanic,
and Avatar 2. Yes. I was going to keep listing all 7 of the Avatars that are come out. But I would want to meet him because he has a research submarine that he owns, and I would want to ask if I could go on the research submarine.
Oh, you'd want to go for a ride on that thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like...
And it's sort of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea situation.
How did you know that was one of my favorite Disney movies of all time?
Well,
That's also one of my favorite books. Anyway, excuse me. Okay. All right. So, just so you know, audience, that was the end of the rapid fire questionnaire. Now, we are going to get into the nitty gritty of this whole thing. So, with all that being said, let's do it. All right. Now, Nate, I just something that I want to know, but I think something that a great deal of the people out there would also like to know. When you were first diagnosed with your autism, like, Did it come easily to you, or did you just take it in stride? Was it a shock? Like, what was your sort of initial reaction with it?
Well, it's really weird. I think I was probably 11 or 12, so that would have been around 2000, yeah, around 2009. So in Idaho, at least, it was very hard at the time to find anybody who was like a clinical professional or anybody who knew what it was or had any ability to diagnose it. And I think it's weird because I grew up with one of my dad's friends' kids who had I don't know what we would call it on now, like because they have ASD 1 through 4, but he was a little more autistic than you and me are,
Okay.
like noticeably so. I'm always surprised that it wasn't noticed by other people before the official diagnosis. But eventually they got me into this. It was this really old guy who looked kind of like Doc Brown from Back to the Future, who ran a clinical office out of the same sort of strip mall type area that the this therapist I was going to
Hmm.
at the time had an office in. And I go in there, and my parents told me it was an IQ test.
Hmm.
When I went in there, it was like, oh, here, check this out. So they would do things like they took me through a there's a test to see where like it's like image association and like spatial puzzles and stuff like that. And so I think some of it was an IQ test, but by the end, it was this really intense looking old man sat down in front of me and was like, all right, son, so you have autism. I don't know. He didn't give me a very thorough explanation of it, and then just looked at me and goes like, so good luck with that. And I just shook his hand like, thank you, sir. He just walked out of there. And there was no follow up. So there was never like, it was like, here's what you can do if you have autism, or here's what you do if, because at the time it was Asperger's, because I know people don't call it that anymore, and we use like ASD
Yeah,
one,
yeah,
two, three,
yeah,
four, however many
yeah,
there
yeah,
are,
yeah,
but nobody even told, because most people know, like enough people have seen Rain Man to
yeah,
know what autism is.
yeah,
But
yeah.
Asperger's, there wasn't even there. Like I don't think even Big Bang Theory was on TV yet. So
Well, I
there's almost no frame of reference.
well to be fair, I don't think Big Bang Theory came on television till I think it was during my senior year of high school or something like that. But I think it was sometime around 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. But
Yeah, so it would have just started, or
yeah,
and even then, those are just nerd archetypes. So
yeah,
most people
yeah,
did not have a frame of reference for what was going on with me. So it was very difficult to despite having the like even that bare bones resource to be able to like communicate that to people and figure out what okay, now that we know about this, what do we do about it? Where do we go from here? And there wasn't a lot, because I ended up moving. We had a huge cross country move from Idaho to Texas, and and there were a lot of big changes within the next 3 years or so that helped me figure out some of the issues related to having Asperger's and what later turned out to be ASD. But it took probably until let me think here. I'm 26 now, so probably until I was like 23
hmm,
to really to feel like I was doing okay development wise.
hmm.
So yeah, that's a pretty a very truncated summary of what the like a broad description of how Asperger's worked for me from the first time I heard about it as an official diagnosis to now.
Well, it's interesting that you didn't get diagnosed till like your early teen years, because like I was diagnosed when I was like 4, 5, maybe 6 years old. But like the crazy thing was when I was diagnosed, they didn't call it Asperger's or autism. It was called developmental disability disorder. Like and so I think the terminology or the definitions may have changed with the passage of time from when I was that young to like 5 or 10 years ago or something like that. But yeah, like I just remember um I was diagnosed, but then like when me and my parents came home after I was diagnosed, and I just remember me and my dad kind of had a one-on-one together where he just sat with me and he was like, Kyle, and he was just like, Kyle, it doesn't matter what your diagnosis is or whatever, anything in life you want to be, you can be. Anywhere in life you want to go, you can go. And anything in life you want, you can have it. And that just, dude, that gave me such a boost when I was that young that honestly it helped me get through so many of the horrible things that I would later have to endure in life from my childhood all the way through to my teen years, my 20s and all that. But yeah, no, I'm glad that with you, even though that it wasn't caught with you early in life, that you were still able to get your diagnosis, and so that way you at least had a bit better of a grasp on like some of your quirks and things like that as a person.
Yeah, and I think we had I think the people in our lives who were interested and able to support us made a huge difference as far as being able to cope with it. Like even pre-diagnosis for me, I didn't want for support or people who were willing to look after me and tolerate whatever at the time was just like maybe being eccentric, kind of weird. Even though I didn't understand that as a kid, was very very easily worked up by and stuck in my own head and struggled with a lot of things that younger autistic people can struggle with. But I think that's why I think it's been harder to diagnose. Well, at least part of the way it's harder to diagnose up until now, because the like people who have a like at the very least like a very, even of the most basic social support system, like an encouraging dad or like a or like family members who can look after you and aren't or people who are willing to like take you out of school for a day if you have like a meltdown or something like that when you're a kid. It's that people being willing to do that for whatever reason it is, no matter what the diagnosis was, I think is still is still a good approach, and is probably why it was harder to get to get specific diagnoses, because you just think there's like, well, whatever it is, you have to react the same to it no matter what.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because I at least in my own personal experience, no matter what, when it comes to a diagnosis, whether it's something like this say say like a family member you care about is diagnosed with like a tumor or cancer or something like that, it's like you gotta approach every situation with some level of empathy and care and things like that.
Yeah, and I think I think that part has probably gotten better in a broader sense,
Hmm.
because now more people know what it like. With every time I asked a girl out and got a date, which having these problems did not happen until I was like 20, 22 or something like that. But but when it did happen, it was almost on like if it seemed to be going well, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna say, like, so just to preface some things,
Hmm.
I have what used to be called Asperger's, and if you think I'm kind of weird, some of the reasons for that are because I have an actual condition. So I'm not trying to be like I'm trying to express that I wasn't trying to be like going out of my way to be strange or have like a difficult time with them. Just that saying like, hey, I'm aware of what this is,
Yeah,
and I want to make sure we're both on the same page.
yeah,
And I think and most people were okay with it.
yeah.
And there was almost no, I'm married now, so clearly somebody is able to put up with it.
Yeah, I was about to say get in
Yeah.
line. I am too. So
Yeah.
I kind of understand how you feel as far as that goes.
But yeah, I do think it's the specificity that a formal diagnosis gives you can be helpful in a lot of ways,
Yeah,
because more people understand what it is now. So if you can tell them that, they know what to look for and how to navigate being around you, and then it gives you a better idea of like, oh, okay, there's not this impenetrable, semi-transparent wall between me and this other
yeah,
person. We can. It's far easier to communicate and connect.
Mhm.
Now that we're on the same page, it's not like what's wrong with you? There's none of that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, because
Yeah.
yeah. All right. All right. So my next question, has there with your autism diagnosis, was there ever a time that you can recall where like you felt that it ever helped you, hindered you, got you into trouble or something like that?
Mm. You know, like I said before, I don't think I started to mention it or learn how to mention it when I was like 13, 14 or whatever, like hey, just say it, or I would like tell like a teacher or something. They're like great, whatever. And it would I well it wouldn't come up because the middle school I went to was full it was a math and science charter school,
Mhm.
so almost every single person there was a little spectrumy.
Yeah.
And now the diagnosis is more common, so when I tell people, it's not a there's no trouble with it, and there's also no like major positive like oh wow no one's like oh wow fascinating, they've heard about it before. It's old news to them, at least. So I think yeah, I can't think of a time that mentioning it ever became a positive or a negative in any extreme direction.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just curious, just because I didn't I mean I know some things about your life, but I don't know a lot. Like I know that we've had moments in the past where we've talked about what you've been through, but I don't really know a whole ton, but I at least feel like you've trusted me enough with aspects of your life to where you can be like, I've been through this, I've done that, and so on and so forth. But
Yeah. Well,
but
I like to think I'm sorry. What?
no, no, I was just gonna say, but anyway, there's I'm not gonna press on you or pressure you to reveal anything you don't want to or whatever,
Yeah,
because
well, I'm going to try and remain charmingly enigmatic throughout this whole interview.
well,
So,
I mean, you've done a good job of that so far. So why stop now?
well, yeah,
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So my. All right. So I. All right. Um. So if you just had one thing that you could say to other people out there who either are diagnosed with autism, haven't been diagnosed, or people who may be going through it or whatever, like, would you offer like some form of encouragement or anything like that to them? And if you could, like, what would it be? Like, what would you do?
yeah. Well, I would encourage anybody and everybody out there, uh, whether you have an official diagnosis or you think you might have autism and think an official diagnosis would be helpful for you, or anything really, or even if you're just interested in autism, read everything by the author John Elder Robison. He's one of the coolest autism speakers and writers I've ever encountered. He wrote a book in, I think, 2009 or 10, called Look Me in the Eyes: My Experience with Asperger's. And it's a memoir about his growing up in a pretty well-to-do but dysfunctional family in Massachusetts in the 1960s, 60s and 70s, as a kid with Asperger's. But no one knew what it was back then. No one had any idea
Yeah.
like they barely knew what autism was, and even then it was just a sort of like broad disability. But for him though, so he had a very weird family situation with like a really crazy mom who became a poet, and his dad was an alcoholic philosophy professor, and a lot of weird stuff. Enough weird stuff happened in his childhood that he ran away from home and joined a like he I think what was it he did he joined a bunch of different bands as a roadie, and yeah, so he became a road. Well, part of it was because he was able to use the his his dad's connections at the college he worked for to take electrical engineering courses when he was like 16. So he ran away from home at like 16,
okay,
17.
alright.
Yeah. So, and then he became a special effects engineer for Kiss.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you see like
Okay.
old concert footage, yeah. So if you see old Kiss concert footage from the like late 70s, early 80s, where they've got like an exploding guitar or like a mortar blasting with the air, he built those.
Oh my,
John L. Robes, yeah.
oh my
And now,
goodness.
yeah,
Holy cow.
yeah. So, but he's got it's a like that book, Look Me in the Eye, and one I finished last year called Raising Cubby, about his experience of being an autistic father with a son who turned out to also have autism, well, like Asperger's,
Yeah.
and it's they're really funny books. There's all kinds of crazy adventures, a lot of explosions across his body of work, being an engineer, but there's all sorts of there are all kinds of beautiful reflections and a lot of self-awareness about like that address things for autistic people that everybody else thinks about. So like how do I have kids? How do I have a fulfilling relationship with somebody? How do I pursue a passion and try to make some money at it? How do I hold down a regular job? How do I advocate for myself for the condition I have?
Basically, it's how do I live life, right?
Yes, kind of, yeah, but it's in a very it's a very specifically funny kind of voice that he writes in too. So it's all memoir style, and it has like brief reflections and bits and pieces of like some like data points that he was interested in, but just to illustrate something.
Yeah.
So to anybody out there, read those.
Oh yeah.
And it'll give you a better picture of yourself and other people with autism than almost anything else I've ever seen has.
By the way, guys, you heard it here, folks, and just so you know, we are not in any way plugging for this guy. We're just telling you this as a tool for like encouragement and stuff like that. We in no way we in no way know this guy or have spoken to him. He's familiar with his work. I'm not, but because of this, I am now encouraged to try and find out more about him and his work and whatnot, and hopefully all of you lovely people out there will be as well. So yeah.
Yeah, John Melvin Robinson, he's I followed him on Facebook for a long time, and the most interaction we ever had was him like liking a post I made under one of his, but
Well, mate. Well,
he does very well. He runs a classic car restoration service, and is is a world touring speaker. So he doesn't need me plugging him.
Obviously,
he's doing just fine.
Obviously, he doesn't. If he's got these successful businesses, and if he has a wife and a family and whatnot, then he's probably okay. He's probably good.
Yeah, doing better than both of us, realistically.
Nate,
if you could send this to him, and perhaps
Nate, we'll get there one day. We'll get there. Okay, okay, perseverance. Okay, perseverance.
I'm kidding.
Makes great.
I'm kidding.
I know. I'm giving you crap. You're my partner. I'm supposed to. Anyway. And by the way, folks, he's not. When I say partner, I don't mean he's my lover. I'm just saying that he's
a terrible place to reveal it.
Because he is my partner and also my lover. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I do not think of Nate in that way whatsoever. He is my colleague and he is my friend. But other than that, yeah, no. Okay. Well, Nate, I just want to say thanks. Thank you so much for being here today on this on the inaugural episode of this show. And I hope that not only your words but my words inspire and uplift not only you and I, but also a crap ton of other people who may or may not see this. And also, before we sign off here, I just want to say to all of you lovely people out there, I hope I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you liked this little peek into not only myself, but also my buddy Nate. And if you did enjoy this, don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, and leave us, if you will, a little comment in the section down below. But until then, I am Kyle.
Oh, it's me, Nate. Yeah, that's right.
Yes, that is Nate. And thanks for taking this walk on a mile in my shoes and his. And I will see you all next time. Nate, do you have any final words?
No, thanks for having me on Walk a Mile in My Shoes. It's gonna be a fun show. There's some cool stuff to look forward to in here.
Well, I'm glad that you have faith in this, and I'm glad that you have faith in me, because I'm starting to get to that point as well. And to all of you lovely people out there who are tuning in or will tune in to watch this, I am signing off for now, and so is Nate. So have a good one. Bye.
See ya.